that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the very famous Tom Fennell.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Today is a kind of an experiment here, or an adventure.
Our program is less important than the youth camp that BCTV does, so they booted us out of the studio. And of course, we're more important than the select board, so we took over their room.
But what's different for me is I'm not going to be able to do any directing because there's no directing to do. We've only got one camera.
You can look like somebody other than a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
Here we go. So every day I get up far too early and I look at the day's news on energy, and I spend about 4 hours actually going through the news and on energy and climate change, and I find everything that I can that's interesting, and I assemble a synopsis to each interesting article and package it with a link to the original, and put the group of 10 to 15 of them up on my blog, and Tom and I talk once a week about the ones we find most interesting. And today happens to be not Thursday morning when we usually record this, but Friday afternoon because of the kids have to learn how to operate television cameras, because otherwise they'll never.
It's not a bad idea.
No, it's not a bad idea.
When I was 12, I didn't know anything about television cameras.
You know, it's funny. When I was not much more than 12, I think, the WRLP TV station was put up in Winchester, New Hampshire, and I lived very close to it. And I learned about television when I was about that age.
Interesting,
and, it was a very different thing than what we have now.
I do remember the television cameras of the day were huge.
Oh, yeah, they were like a trunk.
Yeah.
You know, really, they were much bigger than a suitcase. And the tape machine that they had cost $150,000 used.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was terrible. I mean, you'd expect to get better results out of a cell phone.
Well, now you can tape
whatever you
TV on your own cell phone.
That's right, yeah.
Live TV.
But nevertheless, instead of reminiscing about that, we should probably go ahead and talk about energy, because that's what we're here for.
Well, before we really get active here, I do want to mention that some of these articles we're going to talk about are very good, very detailed, very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have time in this show to talk about them all.
No, we don't.
Though I wish we did, you know.
Yeah, the one about Rex Tillerson and ExxonMobil that was in Rolling Stone, really kind of stunning.
There's another one that's all pictures, and it's wonderful pictures.
Yes, they're great pictures.
We'll talk about that one a little bit later. Yeah. But the way to get them, and I strongly advise some of you do it, is look up George's blog and click on the link.
Yeah, it's goharvey.wordpress.com, and if you're looking at this on at the Brattleboro BCTV website, you should have a link to it there that you can follow. But it's GEOHARVEY.wordpress.com, and you can click on the date that you want to go to on the calendar that's there. So we'll start on the 7th of July, which is a Thursday.
And the headline here is offshore wind costs hit a record low.
Yeah, and here, you know, we've got a real nice picture here of a wind turbine being installed at sea. And this is Dong Energy, D-O-N-G, and I forget what that's an acronym for.
Oh, it's Danish Oil and Natural Gas.
There you go.
It's not a Chinese company at all.
Dong Energy set a record price for offshore wind power with a winning bid to build 2 arrays off the coast of the Netherlands. Dong committed to a supply electricity at 72.70 euros per megawatt hour, which is...
That sounds like it's a lot.
It's $80.40 per megawatt
hour. That's 8 cents a kilowatt hour. That's a lot.
That's offshore wind is expensive.
Yeah, offshore
wind is expensive. Over here, we don't have any. But, you know, not including transmission costs, which add an additional 14 euros per megawatt hour. So
about a penny and a half.
Yeah, so the industry is setting a goal of 100 pounds per megawatt hour by 2020, and this thing has already met that goal, and then some. That was in Climate Home, by the way.
By the way, these arrays are large. They're approximately 70 turbines each.
Yes.
They're big arrays.
These are big arrays, and I don't remember the size of the turbines, but the turbines that they put up at sea are much bigger than the ones they put up on land. And so these might be 5 megawatt turbines.
Well, the article that's got all the pictures shows the nacelle of one of the turbines that GE is building. And it is they say it's the size of a bus. No, it's about the size of 3 buses. This thing is huge.
You could live in the nacelle of one of these things.
Oh, sure.
All you'd have to do would be to cut holes in the side so you'd have windows. Okay, our next one is from North American Wind Power.
The federal court makes a Cape Wind ruling. This is way overdue, but...
Yeah. In a mixed ruling, the federal court ruled that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Bureau of Ocean Energy Management were not in compliance with the Endangered Species Act or the National Environmental Policy Act when they issued a lease for the Cape Wind project off the coast of Massachusetts. Now, this was in regard to 2 birds.
Was it? It was.
Yeah.
I know it was about wildfowl.
Yeah,
Wildfowl.
and the spokesman for Cape Wind said, well, this is not going to be difficult to get through. And they were a little disappointed, but they were very glad that the ruling also said that they were in compliance with everything else.
Well, according to the article, the project will proceed.
Yes. Although the whole project is on hold because the various companies that are supposed to be buying power from it are not buying power from it.
They'll work that one out.
We hope.
If there's power to sell, somebody will buy it.
Yeah, and actually, Cape Wind is a big project, and Massachusetts Senate, and I forget where this ran to, but the Senate and the House disagreed, but not hugely, on the amount of offshore wind they've got to get online, and the Senate figure was 2,000 megawatts. So this is a whole lot of wind power that they're looking for. Okay. Our next item is from Farming UK.
And we got a picture for
we
that
have
one too, don't we?
And it's up, and you can see it right on your computer.
This is a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you talk first.
Well, you read the title.
Biogas grows 30% in a year to power 800,000 homes.
Yeah. Almost a third more biogas is being produced in the UK compared with this time last year, according to new figures from the industry trade body Anaerobic Digestion and Bioresources Association. Can you imagine having that as a name? The AD Market Report shows that the UK now has 617 megawatts of biogas capacity, enough to power the equivalent of 800,000 homes.
We're not doing much about that at all.
Well, Vermont is way ahead of everybody else.
Vermont is, yeah, but I mean the country, and there's all sorts of farm waste that could be turned into and municipal waste that could be turned into oxygen, could be turned into fuel, oxygen,
methane,
turned into methane, turned into fuel.
Yep,
all sorts of things. We're missing the boat there.
The U.S. DOE. The Department of Agriculture said that we could use 11,000 of them on farms. And we've got 16 in Vermont, or did the last time I looked. And we had 16 when California got its first one.
Yeah.
But
and that's just one kind. That's just burning up farm waste.
Yes, and you can use these for municipal waste. And my son was involved with a municipal waste project in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which I've mentioned on the show before.
Yeah.
That services a city of 100,000 people, and it turned their municipal waste department from a money pit into an operation that actually may turn a profit.
An opportunity that I'm thinking we're missing is, I call it farm waste, but it's the part of the food that they grow that we don't eat.
That's right.
I mean, take a look at a corn plant.
Well,
or a cotton plant. My God, there's a couple of snowballs here and there.
Yeah.
And the rest of it has to be recycled.
And all of the food waste that comes out of our stores, out of our restaurants, out of our homes.
All of that
of that can be biodigested. It can be used to make electricity.
Bottom line, we shouldn't be throwing any of that stuff away.
Absolutely. Okay, that's it for Thursday. We're up to Friday, July 8th, and we've got a report
this one's got a good picture, too.
Environment and Energy Publishing.
Will the world's largest storage battery be America's energy cure?
Yeah, indeed. That
And that's a picture, that's not the world's largest storage
No,
battery.
this is a picture in West Virginia.
But it's almost the world's largest.
Yeah, it's a picture in West Virginia where there's a battery at a site where they have wind turbines, and it's the same company. And this picture is, we've actually used this picture before.
Yes, I have seen this picture
Yeah.
before.
On hot days, Los Angeles residents will turn on air conditioners, creating a high demand for power. 5 years from now, natural gas may no longer cover those summer peak loads. It is to be replaced by the world's largest storage battery, capable of delivering over 100 megawatts for 4 hours. And that's a lot.
That certainly is. And a little takeaway there, the customary afternoon peak will still be there.
Yeah.
But the battery will be able to handle it without the need for more fossil fuels.
And one thing to point out
And for
here-
less money than running
Yeah.
a peaker plant.
Yeah, the peaker plants, you know, we talk about the capacity factor and we talk about the price of electricity. And in general, natural gas plants have a fairly good capacity factor. They run 65% of the time, or at 65% of the full load on a month-by-month basis. But some of these peaker plants have capacity factors of 9% or even less.
Yeah, but they use them only when needed.
Only when needed.
So capacity factor really doesn't mean much.
Absolutely. But what happens is, instead of burning natural gas and using power that costs a small fortune.
Oh, it's
because
very expensive.
Those
yeah.
peaker plants, their power is extremely expensive. And so they'll be using batteries instead. And there's more to be said on this, because there's more things going on in Los Angeles, and we will get to those. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
London mayor announces the toughest crackdown on air pollution yet.
Wow. The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, unveiled, and that is his name.
Isn't he the Lord Mayor?
Yeah, he is, and he's the first, I think the first Muslim mayor of London.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's Indian.
He might be. I don't know where he came
Of
from.
Indian extraction.
Of Indian extraction. He may not be Muslim. I may have got that wrong.
Oh,
but
with a name like that, he's got to be.
he can't be a Hindu.
Sadiq Khan is a
He's a Muslim.
Arabic word, you know.
Yeah.
And Sadiq means friend.
Friend, okay.
Yeah.
I'll say friend to him. Hello, friend, if I ever see him on the street, and which I don't expect I will do unless he comes to Brattleboro. Unveiled plans to crack down on the most polluting vehicles. It is said to be the toughest plan ever proposed by any major city in the world. Specifically, Khan has proposed a 10-pound per day emissions surcharge on older vehicles and an extended ultra-low emission zone. They are going to charge cars going into London 10 pounds per day.
Per day.
$13 a day.
Yeah. Well, this is just central London, but, you know, this is
just to
sort of
enter
like
the
the
city.
equivalent of Manhattan Island.
Yeah, it's just to enter the city
Yeah.
and or remain in the city. This is expensive. And so, should we go on? That was
I
from
think
Clean
we
Technica.
shall. Yes, I
Our
think
next
we
item is also from Clean Technica.
TransCanada sues the United States
Wow.
for $15 billion for rejecting
That's not-
Keystone XL pipeline.
Not very friendly.
If you don't play by my rules, I'm going to take my football and go home.
Yeah, right. The foreign oil firm TransCanada has filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government under NAFTA rules, seeking $15 billion in compensation for the rejection of the Keystone XL pipeline project. The suit alleges that the United States violated NAFTA's broad rights for foreign investors by thwarting the company's expectations.
Now, from the article, it puts it in plain language. A foreign corporation is suing the U.S. government for $15 billion in tax money because the U.S. government has acted in the best interests of the U.S. and its citizens.
But we're supposed to act in their interest. That's what they expect. And since we haven't done that, we owe them money, of course. Oh, well, let's
There's
get away
something
from
coming
that.
up this fall that's going to be as bad as NAFTA. It's called the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership.
Well, we'll see what happens.
We'll see
on
what
that.
happens
I know
there. It's
that
very
was one of the
controversial.
things that Bernie Sanders went one way and Hillary Clinton
No,
went the
Bernie and Hillary are on the same page there,
are they?
but Obama is not.
other. I see.
And what everybody's afraid of is in a lame duck session. Late at night on a Friday, you know, they're going to bring it up when nobody's paying attention and
Yeah.
pass it.
Yeah. You're putting me in mind of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. if anybody remembers that thing. Okay, our next one is from The Guardian.
And there's a picture of that one,
I've got
too,
it up.
yeah. Estimated cost of Hinkley Point C nuclear plant rises to $37 billion pounds,
The
which is about $48
$48
billion.
The total lifetime cost of the planned Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant could be as high as $48 billion, according to an assessment published by the UK government. The figure is described as shocking by critics of the scheme, especially as the same Energy Department's estimate 12 months earlier was £14 billion, which is...
That's 250%.
Yeah. Oh, why should anybody complain about that?
A little bit of an increase there.
And
by the way, that picture of Hinkley is not real. Hinkley doesn't exist yet.
That's an illustration.
Yeah.
There are 2 reactors at Hinkley, but they're not these reactors.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who are upset about this because the cost of this plant is so high that it would be cheaper to put in solar power and batteries than this power plant. And it really leaves a lot of people wondering, why in the world would the government want this plant?
I would bet you there's something sneaky going on over there.
I think it has something to do with a big business. EDF
I think you're right.
one.
But it's not well known. But
the union at EDF doesn't want the thing. They're very suspicious of
Yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah.
And now we're coming to this
is
nice
a
little article.
good story. This is a great story
from
with
product
pictures.
design and development, which Tom referred to earlier, that has some really good pictures. I've got the picture of the Fred Olson wind carrier up, and that's
great. I mean, they just jacked that thing up in the air.
This is a ship, and if you look at this,
They want to make it stable so they can work the cranes.
They want it to be absolutely still and standing still relative to the foundation of the wind turbine. And if you look at this, you'll see that there's a heliport pad on the left side of that thing. That ship, I'm going to guess, is probably about 8 stories tall, and it's probably about 10 or 12 stories out of the water. So this is a big piece of work here.
Well, one of the things that the article mentioned is during the time that they're installing all this stuff, the crew, which is about 50 people, which is just temporary, they don't work for this company, they're coming in for the job. They're going to be living on that ship.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know if they're allowed to fish from the side of the ship.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, I'm going to go to the next.
Go to the next picture.
Which is also the same thing, and I'll read.
This is also incredible.
Yeah, this is a photo story from Product Design and Development. It says GE Renewable Energy is assembling the parts of the 5 Haliada wind turbines for America's first
That's just
offshore,
a brand name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
offshore wind farm, which is being built by Deepwater Wind near Block Island off the coast of Rhode Island.
So this story is about what's happening in Europe, but ultimately this is going into the U.S.
That's right. And the nacelles weigh 400 tons each, so they have to be lifted by the crane on that ship. The blades are 240 feet long, and they're transported on the roads. And what we see there
That's a blade.
is a blade being, and they had
And there's 2 trucks, one in the front and one in the back.
That's right, with 2 different drivers.
Yeah.
And they had to. That's like those old hook and ladder fire trucks.
With the guy in the back,
Yeah, and I'm told that his job of steering that back end was not easy because it was not intuitively obvious how to do that.
I've heard the same stuff, yeah. I think he had to turn opposite to what would have been intuitive. you know.
In order to keep going straight,
Yeah.
he's got to turn left or whatever it is, But the towers will be 330 feet tall, and the activity is quite a show. And they, as you can see here, they had to kind of build a little road off the road.
Yeah, they couldn't make the turn.
They couldn't make the turn.
They could not make the turn.
But that thing is 240 feet long, so.
Well, they said it's twice as big as the Statue of Liberty.
Wow.
Not the blade, but the whole thing.
The whole operation, yeah. And clearly that's going to stop traffic on that highway for a little while.
So if you got some time, take a look at that article because
Yeah.
it's fun. There's some really good pictures
That's
there.
on Saturday, July 9th, and again, it's product design and development.
And it sure as heck gives you a good idea about what it takes to build a wind turbine.
Yep. Those things are expensive. Those
I would
offshore wind
think.
turbines,
I
some
think,
of them
yeah.
cost like 16, 18 million dollars each.
I can believe that.
You know,
Yeah.
and one of the anti-wind people was telling me that the turbines only last 6 years, and I was saying, what?
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't, and it's easy enough to check, by the way, that to find out,
Well,
because,
one reason why they may be only lasting 6 years, and in 6 years, there's a second generation coming along that's so much better than the
yeah,
first
well,
generation.
they are getting a lot better, and they're getting capacity factors on these things that are better than the capacity factor for natural gas.
Well, I sent an article to you from Chris Martinson,
I saw that, but
and he was saying, they're building these turbines to last for 25 years or something
Yes.
like that. He said, but they're putting them on concrete bases.
Yes.
Using old-fashioned technology
Yes.
with iron
For the-
rebars.
Yes,
And the rebars, the bases aren't going to last. They're not going to last as long as the turbines.
I don't believe it.
Well,
I don't believe it.
I think
Anyway,
he's on the right track, but his
well,
numbers,
he's-
his
he's
math
got-
might be a little
I
off.
think his math is off. The thing is, these things are guaranteed. They have a warranty.
For
which-
25 years.
Which is 20, 25,
Yeah,
30
yeah.
years, depending upon the manufacturer
And the financing.
and the financing, yeah. And of course, they're not going to do that if they don't expect the turbine to last that long. So
So.
it's easy enough to
Something's
check.
wrong there.
Yeah. Anyway, our next item is from Clean Technica.
This is oil prices down, investment down, supply up, and
Yeah.
energy efficiency down.
Yeah. The International Energy Agency has painted a grim picture for the global oil market, with oil prices dropping, investment dropping, supply increasing, all of which are hurting energy efficiency trends. The oil industry has cut more than $300 billion in spending in 2 years, or about 42% of the overall total.
One of the reasons for this is that the lower oil and gasoline prices are hurting the energy efficiency trends that we just said.
People are buying
primarily in the
SUVs.
transportation sector.
Yeah,
Yep.
yes. People are buying big vehicles.
Bigger vehicles. They're buying SUVs instead of sedans.
And, I remember seeing this from years and years and years ago, when the price of oil is up, people buy cars that.
Buy big cars, yeah.
When the
Yeah.
price is up, they buy little cars. When the price is down, they buy big cars. And they
Absolutely.
forget that a year or two down the line, the price is going to change.
Absolutely.
And-
By the way, I was surprised to find out that the buying of the SUVs was not limited just to the United States and Europe. The Chinese are
Chinese.
going into SUVs big.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's something that I expect is probably going to change, because the Chinese have got their own problems with particularly.
Well, yeah, they got a
pollution.
command economy too.
Yeah, they do. Okay, our next item is from Syracuse.com.
Okay, the New York regulators proposed generous upstate nuclear subsidies. Now,
Well,
we
how
talked about this before.
And we will get back to it in this show. New York State utility regulators today, being I guess the day before the 9th of July, the 8th of July, but the date for this particular item on the blog is the 9th of July, released a proposal to subsidize upstate nuclear plants with annual payments totaling an estimated $482 million a year. The public has until July 18th to comment. Exelon, the owner of the oldest two plants, said it will close them unless subsidies are approved by September. And
The problem there is these plants grew like topsy.
yeah,
The electrical distribution system in that part of the state, which is near the eastern corner of Lake Erie,
yes,
okay, that grew like topsy, but a
Yes.
different topsy.
a different topsy. Got
And
two
with these
topsies.
plants there's enough electricity for Rochester and,
We should write a book about this.
Yeah.
Called The Tale of Two Topsies.
but if they close these plants, there won't be enough electricity for that part of the state.
Yeah, and there's the transmission lines can't
The
bring it
transmission
in.
lines can't handle it.
So the governor is naturally a little bit upset. I mean, this is the kind of thing that a peaking plant would be for. If a nuclear plant goes down, you'd have a peaking plant to supply the power, and the power would cost extra, and it would eventually affect people's power bills unless the nuclear plant could be brought back online. But here, there's 4 plants involved, and 2 of them are probably going to be
They're all old.
shut down. They're
all old.
And it's just a matter of, okay, for the last 20 years, everybody has been saying, let's kick this can down the road. And the solution to what to do after the plants close has not come up, and the plants are now at the end of their licenses, or past the end of their initial licenses, and nobody knows what to do about it. So,
I think that's a good summary. Nobody knows what to do
well,
about it.
the fastest and most effective thing to do about this might be to put in solar power in any way you possibly can, batteries in any way you possibly can, other kind of backup, and there's many kinds of backup, any way you can, put in wind power if you can, and because that puts the source of the power in the local area, which means you don't need transmission lines.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
So
that's really the best solution.
Yeah, they had a transmission line that they were planning on Long Island, that they were planning on building a line costing $495 million, as I recall, and they decided against it because
so many people in the far eastern corner of Long Island were putting up solar.
That's right, and
I think we talked about that.
We've talked about it. Okay, we're up to Sunday, July 10th, and here is an item from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Oh, what a mess. Look at that. This, by the way, is an old picture. It goes back to 2007. It's a picture of Greensburg, Kansas, which is very proud to tell you they are 100% powered by wind 100% of the time. And this is the picture of what happened to Greensburg when they had a little bit more wind than they could handle.
Boy, it totally devastated that town. There's nothing standing.
Yeah.
There's not a leaf on any of the trees.
Yeah, it cut down 95% of the buildings in Greensburg and damaged all of the rest very badly. I know there's at least one building standing today, but this was what happened when they got hit by an F5 tornado.
Well, this article isn't really about Greensburg.
No,
it's about the United States. And we see this as the warmest June as wild weather continues in 2016.
Absolutely.
And right here in Brattleboro, we're noticing the first of the wild weather of this summer.
Yes.
Where I heard on Eye in the Sky this morning that this hot weather we experienced for the last couple of days is likely to last a while.
Well, for the first time in...
It's been cool all summer.
Yeah, I half the time I go through the summer without even installing an air conditioner.
Do you?
I just put in the air conditioner this morning. So
I put it in May 1st.
Yeah, and I turned it to 78 degrees.
Oh, you did really?
Yeah, it's a whole lot better than 90.
Yeah, I hear you.
But what did you read the title to this article?
Well, not word for word, but I'll read it again.
Okay.
USC's warmest June as wild weather continues in 2016.
There you go. America's warm and wild and costly weather broke another record with the hottest June. Federal meteorologists
we know what you mean.
Meteorologists say. They also said 2016 is flirting with the U.S. record for the most billion-dollar weather disasters. In the first half of the year, there have been 8 of them. Why don't we hear about this in the news? 8 used to be the average number for the entire year.
Well, the government keeps track of these things because they're a benchmark, but we don't hear much about it in the news.
Well, there's many different kinds of weather disasters, including flood,
rainstorms like West Virginia just had.
Yes, absolutely.
I think Kentucky had one almost as bad.
Yep. And so we're having these things, and we really haven't got deeply into the hurricane season yet, so who knows what this is going to turn into.
These have not been hurricanes at all.
Yeah, but don't worry about it,
Texas
folks.
got hit with a lot of rain,
If we elect the right person president, we can elect somebody who will guarantee that global warming, climate change is not happening.
He's going to make it illegal.
He's going to make it illegal. There you go. He may make it illegal to talk about, but... Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
UK National Grid sees a big boost for solar, EVs, and batteries.
Yep. The foreword to a new report quotes National Grid's head of energy insights as saying, quote, "We are in the midst of an energy revolution," end quote. 2 years ago, National Grid expected the solar capacity of the UK to be 8 to 17 gigawatts by 2030. Today, they see 15 as a minimum and believe the capacity could be as much as 39.
So it's kind of doubled, isn't it?
Yeah, it has. In 2 years. They've doubled their expectations in 2 years.
The times they are a-changing.
They are indeed. And our next item is from SF Gate.
This comes down a little bit closer to home.
A little closer to home.
Sanders wins climate plank for party platform.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders' still impassioned campaign electrified debate over the Democratic Party's platform, winning concessions on climate change. Sanders supporters cheered when they won environmental amendments that included support for pricing greenhouse gases, prioritizing renewable energy, and limiting fracking. I don't think he got what he wanted exactly. I know the fracking thing, he wanted to have a nationwide ban, and what they agreed to was that local governments could ban it, but
Well, the thing about it is, it's in the platform, but the platform isn't mandatory.
yes.
But at least people are going to be talking about it.
Yes, and the platform is supposed to be guidance for everybody in the party who's running for office.
It is
at the
supposed to be.
National level. So this is not just the presidential candidate, and Bernie Sanders has endorsed Hillary Clinton because she's got the delegates to win the nomination. But it also applies to anybody who's running for Congress.
Well, I'm sure a deal was made for some of his platform, some of his ideas to be in the platform.
I
don't think he'd have done it if he didn't get at least.
He said that he got 80% of what he wanted.
Well,
Which
step in
is-
the right direction.
Yeah, it is. Okay, we're up to Monday, July 11th.
Well,
And
this-
we have a slide
Nice,
on this
nice
one.
picture
There
of
we go.
some
Developers of
Offshore turbines?
turbines in Scotland.
Scottish government joins developers in offshore wind collaboration. This is kind of interesting. Order.
Yeah, as part of the Carbon Trust's offshore wind accelerator program, developers Dong Energy, ENBW, E.ON, Iberdrola, RWE, SSE, Statkraft, Statoil, Vattenfall have signed up to the initiative to help reduce the cost of offshore wind power to £100 per megawatt hour by 2020. And you know, we had a thing just a little bit ago where we talked about Dong Energy getting 80 pounds and 80 pence, and plus the 14 pounds for the connect. So
Yeah.
they've already busted through this goal that these people have for 2020.
Yeah, they're ahead of the goal.
Yeah.
They are ahead of the goal.
Developers will invest 6.4 million pounds over the next 4 years. This is
It's
from
interesting, this
Eddie.net.
list of developers is a litany of the leaders in this field.
Yeah, well, yes,
They're all
it
the
is.
big guys.
Yeah, it is. Although they're not, they don't, these are the big developers. They are not.
Developers, right.
They are not the big manufacturers.
Right. Although some of them manufacture too.
Yeah. And so that is, as I said, from Eddie.net. And now we're up to still on Monday, July 11th.
Well, this one I could not
You
get a
couldn't
copy
get
of.
it.
It's
I
subscription only from the Financial Times.
Financial Times.
And it was listed, it was on about a dozen other locations on the web, and they were all linked to Financial Times. So I gave up after half an hour.
I'm sorry about that. Germany's new renewable energy law is not as ambitious as the other EU states and lacks stability. This is Germany. Stability in volumes for offshore wind, according to Wind Europe. The law sets a variable offshore cap to ensure the country reaches 15 gigawatts of wind energy target over the next 15 years, and it replaces feed-in tariffs with auctions. Now, what they're saying here is they have figured out how much they want, and then they have figured out the numbers that have to come online to reach that goal, which is 15 years away. And they have limited their incentives to the amount that is needed on a year-by-year basis to reach that goal, which is going to be an average of 1 gigawatt per year. 1 gigawatt of wind power, offshore wind power, is probably equal to about, it's about the product of a big nuclear reactor. So.
Okay, yeah.
Because you've got a difference in capacity factors. The capacity factor for offshore wind in that part of the world is going to be,
It's fairly high.
it's high. It's going to be 50 to 60%. And a nuclear reactor, outside of the United States, nuclear reactors average about 85%. So in the United States, they average upwards of 90%, but that is something I find worrisome. Okay,
Let's go to the next one
Albany
here.
Times Union.
I couldn't lock on to that one either, but I found a word-for-word copy somewhere else, so I got the story.
I should tell everybody that I have a problem because I get to these things through Google searches, and the Google searches will send me to websites that accept my search,
Through
and I
Google.
can get in there, and it'll record the fact that I have got in there.
Yeah.
It will allow me in again.
That's interesting.
And then if I use the link to where it was a week later, it may be absolutely impossible. And, you know, the Brattleboro Reformer is a newspaper that I try not to use because
Well, they get everything out of their
in a week.
repertoire in a week.
In
Yeah.
a week, and you
It's
have to be
gone.
a subscriber, or you're not going to be able to get to it. But in the meantime, you know, if you're doing things the way that I'm doing them, I could think that a person can get to the Reformer and discover a week later that they can't anymore. So
Well, let's
this
get
is
back
something
to
that
this guy,
happens.
because its costs soar at New York energy plants.
Yeah, remember we
And
talked about
this
the
is
480.
this is critical here.
Yeah, $480 million to support nuclear per
Yeah.
year. Well, here we go. Estimated subsidies for nuclear plants in New York have soared to $965 million over the first 2 years. Actually, that's a similar figure, because this is a 2-year
Yeah.
commitment. The Department of Public Service said in a new proposal, initial estimates of the subsidies had been in the range of $59 million to $658 million through 2023. And what's happening here is when they subsidize these plants, they have to subsidize them for periods of upwards of a year, probably for an average of 1.5 years, because 1.5 years is the time between fuelings.
Yeah.
And if you decide that you're going to close the plant down, you can continue to get power from it for several months after the time that would come when you would normally refuel it. For example, Vermont Yankee was supposed to be refueled in September, but it continued running when they were closing it down until December. So I think they probably have to review this thing every 1.5 or 2 years.
Well, the article mentioned that Governor Cuomo is working to close a fourth plant, Indian Point, which we've talked about. We know that.
Yes, that's 2
And they
reactors.
should have closed that a long time ago.
That is.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah,
I mean, 50
that's-
million people within, what, a 50-mile radius?
Yes, and that particular plant is in an area where you don't have the problem with transmission lines being overburdened. And the other thing that people should understand about nuclear power, there's a lot of things that people don't understand about nuclear power, and the nuclear power industry doesn't advertise them. If you look at the number of nuclear plants that have ever been brought online worldwide, you'll find that the number is pretty close to 500. It might be, at this point, 550, I don't know. But there have been 11 meltdowns. And I can name those 11 meltdowns, and that means that the chance of a nuclear power plant melting down in the average lifetime that these plants have served, which is about
It's fairly high.
75%
It's kinda
of the
scary.
lifetime. It's 2%. So go to a person in a town and say, we want to put a nuclear power plant in your town, and the chance of its melting down is only 2%. You're not going to get much traction on
Not
that.
very much.
But
There's an interesting remark in this here that connects to something we've already talked about.
yes,
Entergy,
yes,
which owns Indian Point and
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick,
and used to
has-
own
and used to own Yankee,
Vermont Yankee.
has previously indicated that a subsidy would not change company plans to close Fitzpatrick.
Again, because they can't just say, okay, you know, the plant would go down in September, but we'll keep it going for another 1.5 years, because they've got to order the fuel about
Yeah,
a 1.5 years
yeah.
in advance, or a year in advance or something. So they would have to close it down, leave it, and then come back when the fuel arrives and turn it back on again. This is not
That's
something
expensive.
It's not a convenient way of doing
don't
things.
think
You know,
so.
shutting a nuclear plant down and then you know, or having a plan to shut the plant down and then coming back to it later, that could be a big problem. Now, it happens that in the news, and I don't remember if that's in this week or not, it looks like Exelon may buy those plants from Entergy.
That's
with
interesting.
with the obvious intention of keeping them going.
Yes, I would figure.
Now, the thing is, Exelon has 17 nuclear power plants, and 8 of them are scheduled to shut down. So it may be that they're sitting back and saying, okay, we ordered fuel that could go into that plant, We don't have anything to do with it. So if we bought one of these plants, we could put that fuel in it. I'm really kind of grasping at straws to try to figure out why Exelon would want to buy the thing. But anyway,
I'm sure they got their reasons.
they've got their reasons.
Yeah.
They're not stupid, and they know how to read numbers. Okay, our next item is from Tuesday, the 12th of July. It's Web India 123.
This is an interesting one. China to slow energy project construction and shifts to capacity cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they've been kind of overdeveloped in some parts of China
They
anyhow,
have
so they're
indeed.
really just catching up.
Yes, China will ban the construction of new coal-based chemical facilities and coal-fired power plants until 2018 and continue to shed overcapacity in coal mining and oil refining, according to the state news agency Xinhua. I hope I'm pronouncing that. It might be Xinhua. I don't know how to pronounce it. I know that it's neither of those because I didn't get the intonations right. The ban on projects should cut coal's share of the overall energy mix to 58% from 64% it currently has. Now that's a 10% loss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in just a couple of years. So they're getting serious about getting off coal.
Well, there's a sentence here, the ban on projects should help achieve the government's target to phase out 500 million tons of coal production by 2020. That's a lot.
That's a lot of coal production. And meanwhile, you've got the Liberal government in Australia, which under Tony Abbott was saying we're going to be the coal producers of the world, and we're going to sell to India, and we're going to sell to China, and the Chinese are basically saying, no, you're not. Anyway, our next item is from City AM.
And this is an interesting one, too. Britain gets more power from the sun than coal for the first time in May. Now, this is the first time ever.
Yeah, and I remember, when I was much younger than I am today, talking with a friend of mine who was up on technology about solar power and how you can get solar power. And in those days, I don't think PVs were even available, but there were ways to get power from the sun. And he said, no, we're probably never going to see it we may never see it in New England. You never can tell. But in Britain, places like that, no, they're just too far north. Britain has generated more electricity from the sun than coal-fired power plants for the first time on a monthly basis, new research has shown. Solar panels in homes and businesses across the UK produced more than 1.38 terawatt hours in May. The Times reported that is much more than coal-fired power stations, which added only 0.89 terawatt hours. That is 1.38 terawatt hours of solar, 0.89 of coal. 1.38 to 0.89. That is a big difference. So,
well, part of what's going on is just relying less on coal generation as falling wholesale gas prices make it less profitable.
yes, and they're putting in more solar, although rather slowly compared to what they could be doing. So we're up to Wednesday, July 13th, and we have a picture here of the beautiful coal strip power plant. Isn't that lovely? Those things that look like ponds in the front, I believe they're ponds. And if I were a duck and landed in those, I don't
think you'd ever get out of them.
I've seen birds land in chemical ponds and just expire right on the spot.
Well, the headline here says Puget Sound Energy, which is the local utility, to retire some coal-fired power.
Yep, this is from Seattle Weekly. Washington's power grid may have come one step closer to being carbon-free. In a settlement with the Sierra Club, Puget Sound Energy, and co-owner Tallinn Energy finally agreed to shut down the two oldest, dirtiest units of a coal-fired power plant in Montana. PSE still gets 20% of its electricity from coal strip. Now, this is a utility in Washington State agreeing with the owner of the power plant and the Sierra Club to shut down or to stop using this particularly dirty coal burning power plant. This is a big operation.
Well, if you look at that picture, there's 4 stacks.
Yes.
The 2 stacks on the left are smaller than the 2 stacks on the right.
Right.
And they are apparently the older ones, and what it said in the article is Colstrip is a decades-old coal facility that's been pegged as one of America's dirtiest power plants.
Right.
So it's the old plant that they're shutting down.
Yeah, the two higher stacks.
They're going to keep that running.
Right, and this two higher stacks thing happened because the federal government determined that they did not want the pollution from that coal to come down in the people of the area, so they put the stacks up higher so that the wind would blow it farther away, and instead of coming down in Montana, it would come down in Vermont. You know?
That's not as far-fetched as it sounds.
Yeah, we don't get much from there, but the pollution that we get in Vermont, a lot of the pollution that we've historically had in Vermont, and the pollution that has made it impossible to trust fish in many of our streams has come from Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin,
A lot
Ohio,
of them come from the
Michigan.
plants along the Ohio River.
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, they got some really high towers there,
Yep.
or stacks,
And
and it's coming down here.
it just means that it comes down farther away. The idea is if you dilute it more, nobody's going to notice.
There's a little backstory here.
Yeah,
And part of the reason, and maybe the biggest reason why this is happening, is the Sierra Club was suing the utility, PSE, for violations of the Clean Air Act.
right.
And as a result of a deal, they basically said, okay, we'll
We'll
withdraw
drop the
your
suit.
suit
Yeah.
if you close these plants.
These suits are interesting because, for example, we've seen children bringing lawsuits.
Yeah, we have.
Against big industries and winning, as a matter
Yeah.
of fact, because their future is being, they have a right, like every other American, to life, liberty, and this pursuit of happiness. And if they can't live, they don't have their rights have been abridged. And coal. This is true of all of the fossil fuels. They all pollute like mad. People don't realize the damage that's done. Depending upon who you believe, the what is it? The International Energy Agency comes up with one figure, the World Health Organization comes up with another, but it comes to somewhere between $250 and $1,000 per year per person worldwide, and you know that the people who are paying that cost for the external costs of fossil fuels are not the people who are earning $2 a day. So it falls disproportionately highly on Americans and Europeans and Japanese and Australians and so forth. But it's falling on people, and that means that a family of 5 in Vermont may be paying $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, $5,000, $6,000 a year for medical expenses connected with fossil fuels. They don't know it because
No,
the whole
you're right.
thing is concealed in the fact that it's going into medical insurance and taxes. And so you eliminate this stuff, and you produce a situation where there's a lot more wealth among ordinary people because fossil fuels have been eliminated. But in order to do that, we've got to satisfy our electric demand by efficiency, renewable power, and so forth. And not just our electric demand, but our demand for heat and our demand for transportation.
Transportation's a
And
biggie.
Transportation is a big one. And in Vermont, transportation and
Very big
heat
in
are
Vermont
the
as
two
a
biggest ones.
percentage, yeah.
Yeah. Our electricity is actually pretty clean, if you allow for the fact that we may not get credit for it, but a lot of it is coming from hydro dams. And I'd like to see it done locally, because that would give us the capacity to work in the direction of resilience.
Well, that's coming, I think. I think
I
if
hope
present
so.
trends continue, that will happen.
Yep. Our next item comes from Reuters.
This is a good one. New nuclear reactor builds fall to zero for the
Yeah.
first half of 2016.
Yeah. Construction, this is from Reuters. Construction
This is global.
starts globally. Construction starts for new nuclear reactors fell to zero globally for the first half of 2016 as the atomic industry struggles against falling costs for renewables, a slowdown in Chinese building. A report on the industry showed a number of reactors under construction is in decline for a third consecutive year. And the people in the nuclear industry keep saying nuclear renaissance is almost here. It's coming. And you know, one of the things that I think is crazy about this is the idea that we're going to go to fusion reactors. Because, you know, fairly frequently people will say, well, you've got an infinite supply of the fuel. It's just water. I'm sorry, it's not water. It's deuterium oxide and tritium oxide. Deuterium oxide is
Heavy water.
Heavy water. It's really expensive. The hydrogen in there is going to be thousands of dollars per pound. Tritium, yeah, that actually does exist in nature, but you're not going to get it there. You have to make it. You have to use a nuclear reactor to make that. And on top of everything else, it costs millions of dollars per pound. So this is the fuel, all right? Well, if you're making enough electricity, it doesn't matter how much they cost. But we're years from having a workable nuclear reactor. They've been working on it since the early 1950s.
Workable fusion reactor. Yep.
They've been working since the 1950s, and it's only recently that they've got to the point where they've had a reaction that went on for more than a zillionth of a second that produced more energy than it consumed. So we're years from having the thing, and then we're many years from having it licensed and built out and designed and so forth, and then many years after. It
probably will never happen.
I don't think it'll ever happen.
Because renewables are just going to make it no longer economical.
There is a nuclear reactor that is so inexpensive. It's crazy.
We've talked about it on the show.
Yes, it's called the sun.
That wasn't the one I was thinking of.
Oh, okay. Well,
but you're right. Yeah, absolutely right.
Energy amplifier.
Yeah. I didn't realize what you were talking about, but absolutely.
That's a fusion reactor.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
There's a takeaway from this.
Yes.
Renewables investments totaled $100 billion in China last year. That doesn't sound too great, but more than 5 times the amount for new reactors.
Yeah.
Which was $18 billion.
Yeah. So there you go.
So there you go.
And you know, we're in a point here where I think nuclear reactors are going to fall into a rapid decline because in the United States they've been hit by cheap competition with natural gas, but natural gas has been hit by cheap competition from wind power. And now natural gas is being hit by competition from solar because it's getting to the point where it's cheaper to put up solar to get the electricity than it is to put up natural gas. The
Absolutely.
Price for the electricity for solar is below what it is for natural gas. You add batteries in there, and maybe it's not cheaper yet, but it will be very soon.
It's moving in that direction.
And the price of natural gas is low, which means that it'll probably go up. And when it does, the price of electricity from natural gas will be well above the price of electricity from solar. And you mentioned this, and it really, you know, I retained it because it's something that's interesting to observe. You get to a point where the price of renewable energy is so low, wind is already there, solar is getting there, that even if the fuel for fossil fuels was free, it would still be too expensive to use it. So we're in a new world. The age is changing. The coal industry is closing down. The natural gas industry is about to close down, and within a few years, I think. And I would not invest in that industry myself.
Well, let's close up the show with an interesting article. The continuing saga of solar impulse.
Yeah, and I saved this one for last. This one is
solar plane lands in Egypt in penultimate stop of world tour.
Penultimate. I remember. I think the first time I heard it was in a Latin class when the Latin teacher was talking about the anti-penultimate syllable, and the accent on the syllable had to be in the right place. So, anyway, this is from Muscat Daily, which is obviously not in Italy.
You got that picture there, don't you?
I do. It's up. See,
I can't see it. Yeah.
It's right behind you. See? There you go.
I still can't see it. For some reason, it must be too dark. There it is.
It's a dark picture. You know, there was obviously some atmospheric disturbance at the pyramids when this thing flew over.
Probably a windstorm.
Probably a windstorm, sandstorm, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, Solar Impulse 2 landed in Cairo. Cairo?
Cairo?
Cairo.
It's Cairo, Illinois.
Cairo, Illinois. But, I was joking. Sorry, people, it's not funny. On Wednesday, for its penultimate stop, as the solar power plant landed near the end of its marathon tour around the world after a 2-day flight from Spain, just one final leg lies between it and its final destination in Abu Dhabi, where it started its odyssey in March of last year. And that from Muscat Daily, and it would have finished long ago, except that it had problems with its batteries.
We got a quote from the pilot here that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Picard does not expect solar-powered commercial planes anytime soon.
I'm not surprised.
There will not be passengers very soon. This is a quote now. There will not be passengers very soon in solar airplanes like ours. But there will be passengers very soon in electric airplanes that will charge on the ground. On the ground, you can charge batteries. You can have short-haul flights, maybe 300 miles, with 50 people flying in these planes in a decade.
I think that could be.
So the New York to Boston is going to be electric
And
electric
you'll have
planes.
far more planes, but you'd have far less pollution.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that could be.
I think that's prophetic.
But you know what it reminds me of a little bit is a story that Rudyard Kipling wrote. And he actually could have written it here in Brattleboro.
Yeah, he could have.
But it's a story called Night Mail, as I recall. And it's about airships crossing the Atlantic Ocean carrying the mail. And the airships were all blimps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
They were dirigibles. They weren't blimps, actually. They were dirigibles. There's a distinction.
When would this have been?
Oh, he was talking about how people had experimented with airplanes and they got them off the ground, but they never really got very far with them. And
so we're talking like 1890 or something like that?
No, we're talking about 1910, perhaps.
1910, yeah.
I don't know when he was living in Brattleboro. I know that he was apparently unhappy with Brattleboro, and from what I understand, Brattleboro was unhappy with him.
He still named a road after him.
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm about 70 years old, so I was born in 1946. When I was a kid, there were people in Brattleboro who still remembered him.
Oh yeah.
And so the memory of his being here was fresh, or fresher certainly than it is today. But he had an Englishman's point of view toward people who were around, farmers and servants and things of that nature. And in those days, middle class households in Brattleboro had servants. People don't realize that, but they did. And now you've got washing machines and dishwashers and things. In those days, they had servants. And he was not as friendly with his servants, I'm told, as some people would have liked. Nevertheless, we're getting way off subject here, and it's time to say goodbye, I think.
Well, we've run out of items to talk about.
We have.
I'm sure we can find some more. But
We've got more coming. Today being Friday, I know what some of next week's will be already, and it's going to be rare.
I'd love to take another look at those pictures of the turbines being assembled. I wonder if there's enough meat there to run it into an extra.
The thing of this
one, yeah.
The Fred Olson wind carrier and the well, there is enough there, and I don't want to take that. I should contact them and see how they would feel about that. I think they might like it.
They might, yeah. It's sure as hell interesting.
It is, yeah.
And what I got out of it that I knew all along but didn't know, how big these damn things are.
They're unbelievable. They're unbelievable. But they are, they're relatively non-polluting. It's true. There's energy going into building them. There's energy going into building their foundations, but they're relatively non-polluting. They produce about a 20th of the amount of pollution to a 30th of the amount of pollution that coal does, and a 20th of the amount of pollution of natural gas. And that includes construction and taking them apart and so forth. This has all been studied fairly well. So I've spouted long enough. I think Tom has provided his wisdom for long enough, and between the two of us, we've bent your ear long enough. So we say goodbye. See you next week. moment of hope, gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.